Hello indie game fans, it's All Hallows Eve and as is tradition every year, there is a sale currently on Steam, so here are some titles to check out which are in line with the season. Let's begin with The Dishwasher Vampire Smile, a stylish 2D action platformer that comes to us from the developer of Salt and Sanctuary. It has a fantastic graphic novel inspired art style, combined with the bloody action, makes this suitable for the season. It's a little underrated and actually released on Xbox in 2011, coming to Steam much later, which may be a title that you missed, but certainly check it out if you love this genre. We have another old school pick with Oregon Trail Director's Cut, one that, from the name, is of course inspired by Oregon Trail, the educational game that was pretty widespread in the 80s and 90s. However, rather than playing as a pioneer travelling from Missouri to Oregon and dying of dysentery, you instead play as survivors trying to escape the zombie apocalypse. While it is some form of parody, the gameplay elements are surprisingly deep and has a retro pixel art style that is very effective at evoking games of that era, and is a pretty cheap title on discount, so please check this out. One of the more interesting horror series is the Lakeview games from this developer, where we are looking at Lakeview Valley here, a life sim RPG set in a town filled with secrets. On the Steam store page, players have described this game as Animal Crossing, but the whole town hates you and Satan is living there, and in this example, you are Satan, so how's that for an intriguing premise? Think of it as Stardew Valley, but so much darker, where murder has occurred in town, and it is up to you to solve or ignore this main story. The various characters each have their own schedules, backstories, and hide their own secrets, with something supernatural lurking in the dark as well, but it's one of the most unique, freeform experiences that is certainly apt for the season.
Zakharavia, the fallen city. Whatever haunts this cursed city, I will face to find my friend.
Let's have something a little less scary, shall we? Victor Vran ARPG is a Diablo-style action RPG that is pretty good, showing up on my list of the best games like Diablo, link in the top right, and has you slaying demons as the titular character. There's plenty of variety in the enemies and their behaviour, with movement and traversal abilities that give you slightly more freedom of exploration as compared to that in Diablo. Interestingly, it also stars the voice of Geralt of Rivia as our hero, making it an experience worth having. A title that I try to bring up when appropriate is The Sexy Brutale, another murder mystery game with a time loop element, set in the titular Mansion Casino, where you have to figure out who is behind the murders. As such, it's about getting to know these characters and their schedules, piecing the puzzle together, with a wonderful cast of characters and clever game design. With the recent popularity of time loops in games, it is always interesting to go back to an earlier title to see how they did it, where of course, it's pretty masterfully executed here. Of interest as well is the art style, which, despite being released in 2017, has a decidedly 90s look which makes this stand out. For as classic a genre as the point-and-click adventure game is, going back to titles like Monkey Island and Grim Fandango, developers have found this style of gameplay to be uniquely suited for horror, case in point being Fran Bow from 2015. You play as a girl struggling with a mental disorder, recovering in an asylum after witnessing the gruesome murder of her parents. Strange visions and monsters aplenty in this game, warping the perception of the character's reality, being a very intense and messed up game that is just perfect for this time of year. I just covered the upcoming sequel to STASIS, subtitled Bone Totem, in a video previewing upcoming horror games, link in the top right, but if you have not played the original, I would highly recommend that you pick this up, especially since it's 80% off. While I believe there's no need to have played the original in order to enjoy the sequel, this is set on board a seemingly abandoned spacecraft where our protagonist awakens from stasis into a dark new reality. Most interestingly, this uses an isometric camera angle, so it looks like your classic CRPGs like Baldur's Gate or Neverwinter Nights, but it's actually a point-and-click adventure game where this style of presentation has become the signature of South African developer The Brotherhood. Still, it's a super creepy horror title with some disturbing implications, making this for fans of the genre. A no-brainer pick for the top 3 is Darkwood, one that has appeared in my videos covering the best horror games, and while it is from a top-down perspective, do not be fooled, this is one of the most intense games out there. Like many survival games, it has you exploring and scavenging for resources in the day and hunkering down in your hideout at night, only the enemies here are a lot more scary than the zombies in Terraria and are truly frightening to behold. It is certainly in the vein of games like Don't Starve, only that the horror dial is turned up to 11, so do take that into consideration when deciding on this game. A not so scary but still pretty freaky game is Lobotomy Corporation, a roguelite management sim where you're in charge of a facility similar to the SCP Foundation, having to curate and isolate dangerous monsters by hiring the right employees and building the correct facilities. However, it is not a simple tycoon game, since these monsters and anomalies can escape containment and cause all sorts of trouble, where you start out with zero information on these creatures and have to learn by trial and error. For a relatively niche title from a South Korean developer, this has an impressive number of Steam reviews, and by extension, estimated sales figures as well, where it is now even more of note since its sequel, Library of Ruina, is possibly a non-mainstream pick for Indie Game of the Year 2021. You know me, I love my farming and life sim titles since they give me some sense of comfort and grounding in a world which is pretty fast-paced and intense, which was why Graveyard Keeper in 2018 didn't really appeal to me. Instead of running a farm, you are put in charge of a medieval graveyard, having to take care of and bury the dead with a number of moral and ethical choices posed to you, since the objective is to run a successful business. There are cults and heretics, a religious order that fancies themselves some witch burning, and even a dungeon crawling combat element, where at 75% off, this is a pretty good deal. In the 3 years or so since launch, this developer has put out 3 paid DLCs which augment and add to the experience, but if you're on the fence, I would recommend trying out the base game first. Also, me being me, I do love the pixel art here, so for being quite a nice alternative in the farming RPG space, it takes the #1 spot. For more farming or grimdark games, watch these videos and I will see you after the jump.